Okay, so this is a pre-introduction. Today's Monday, July 8th in the morning. I had a bunch of great clips from yesterday. Hilarious stuff from Jojo McCoo, including a clip from the interview that I somehow missed or they didn't show it, where he said, "If I just do my goodest." And, I woke up this morning and I was thinking about this in a humorous way. Joe Biden is now the butt of the joke, right? He's the joke that he doesn't understand and doesn't get. And we have Michael Moore that I'm going to show today later on. I'm talking about how this is elder abuse, something that my wife has said for years now. Where he is completely gone and, out of touch with reality. And everybody but his inner circle sees that he's got to go. and But his inner circle and him are putting their heels, sticking their heels in the ground, and they're not going. And like he's become a joke, and everything he does, he thinks he's rocking it. After the debate, he thought he did okay. He thought he did pretty good. He said to a person in Waffle House, right? And so he's, in one of those situations where everybody's laughing, and he doesn't know they're laughing at him and not with him. And so he's the butt of the joke. And Trump and everybody else, I mean, on the Republican side, are, celebrating his sticking around. The longer he sticks around, the worse he screws the party. And he might not leave at all. He might not leave. And they're going to be stuck with this guy, which would be hilarious. We'll see how it goes. But I don't think he's stepping down. I don't know what it's going to take. But he's not looking at any feedback. He's completely insulated by his people around him who are hell-bound bent on him. They don't care if they do a weekend at Bernie's things with him. They're going to run this M&F'er. Because, once he steps down, they're out of power. And they don't really want Kamala. So it's just a wonderful thing that's happened. All right, so I got to go grab some more video clips today and then edit this thing. It'll probably be up on Tuesday, July 9th. But you'll know that when it comes out. But it's hilarious. Like it's becoming comical, and he's nowhere near close to stepping down. Greetings, brothers and sisters. Sunday, July 7th, 2024. Today is my 60th birthday. Please do not say happy birthday. That's not why I'm saying that. It's going to be whatever, probably the 8th or ninth when you listen to this. Probably the 9th, the video, so it'll be past, and, I've already forgotten about it. Just want to say a little bit about that, though, since it's, I haven't been aware of my age. Like, I'm not sure how old I am since I turned, sometime in my 40s, and it got worse in my 50s, where I just wasn't aware of how old I was. Exactly. I knew like within a year or two. I'd have to do the math. But last year, I realized I was going to be 60 this year. My 50th birthday I don't even remember it. Like it was non-existent. My family was going through a crisis. I was going through a divorce. Some part of that in 2014, and we were in India. And I just don't remember it. Maybe we weren't in India. I don't know. I'm not sure where we were. The summer of 2014, probably in India, but maybe not. Maybe camping. But either way, there was nothing. There's no significant memory, and I didn't think much about it. 50 is a big year. My birthdays have been usually disappointing. It started when I was a kid, and I've since learned that I don't think of it as a special day, right? Thinking about it as a special day is an issue, because whenever you think you're going to have a special day, the chances of you being disappointed, usually holidays or Super Bowls or various things that you put emphasis on as being better than other days, the chances are it's not going to be. Right? Sometimes it's even going to be worse. And your mood, the way that you feel, some of it you can manipulate by expectation or, whatever it is, by wishful thinking. But, some days you just wake up tired, you wake up grumpy, it's just the energy's not there, you get a headache, these things, right? Some of these things are out of your control. And so what I've learned is that there's not really special days. Whether they're the special days, the good days, I mean, they all could be called special days, but then they're not special. But the good days that stand out just happen. The bad days, they just happen. And so, you never know when those days are going to happen. I realized this when I was playing sports. Some days you just feel connected. You're really, in the zone. It's one of the things I'm really grateful for in terms of doing these videos. Because as soon as I pick up the microphone, I get in the zone. I can be tired. I can feel discombobulated. I can feel, whatever it is, right? But anyways, back to my birthday. So as a little kid, there was the first one I think that stands out was when I was 7, I got chickenpox. And my dad, who was kind of a cheap F, decided to make a family pool, which was just some round above ground pool, one of those small little round above ground pools. This was back in the 70s, right? So this was 1971 or 2. I guess 1971. And maybe 72, I don't know. I don't know how it works. I was born in 64, so you don't tell me. I don't care. I woke up a little bit early today. And so they decided to give me a pool for my birthday, but I got chicken pox. And they put in a fence because they were paranoid some kid was going to climb into our above ground pool and drown, even though it was only 4 feet deep. Right? And our next door neighbors, when there was a fence on one side and a teenage girl, like they didn't have any little kids. And then the next door neighbors, the Cronins, they were a big Irish family, but it was just the mom and the dad and one of their like adult daughters, who was probably in her 40s. And once in a while, their grandkids would come over, but it was, it just no one was going to drown in there. My parents put in this big fence, and my dad was, freaking out about how expensive it was. I had no idea why we were putting in the fence, and it turned out they got a pool for me for my birthday, and nothing else. Like I had no other presents, and I had the chicken pox, so it kind of sucked. And I remember sitting on my family all went to swim in the pool. It was like a small little, big giant hot tub basically. And I remember sitting on the side of it, feeling like bummed out, right? Like my birthday sucked. There are a few other things that stand out, like they did those candles that I had some kind of birthday party with kids over. They did those candles where you blow them out. They relight, and I think they let it go on too long. Like I was maybe even younger than that. I was like 5 or 6, and they let it go on way too long. Like I kept on trying to blow out the candles, and they were encouraging me to do it, and I didn't know the better of these things. So, like I remember that. I remember one time they asked me what I wanted for a cake, and I said anything but strawberry shortcake, and they gave me strawberry shortcake. And they had this habit of getting me the wrong thing. Like if I wanted like Coleco, they would get me a different brand or something, or just not listening to me. And I remember feeling bummed out a lot on my birthday when I was a kid. Some of them stand out, some of them don't. And that sort of continued into my adulthood. Like it would be, especially when I wasn't doing very well, when I didn't have any goals. And, your birthday is what it's really good for. It's for other people to celebrate, right? People celebrate your birth. You don't celebrate your own birth. Like people, misunderstand this. It's for other people to celebrate. People who are grateful for your birth. That's the meditation that I do. People celebrating the masters of the meditation system. Like you would celebrate Jesus or Krishna's birth or some great soul or saint or somebody that's, done a lot for you in some way. Someone you're grateful for that they've been born, right? Someone you're happy that person was born. You feel blessed that you got to know this person. So like to think about it as a day for you is a wrong way to go about it. Other than that, it's a measuring stick, right? Because it marks your entry into this world. And every year there's significant development, and you kind of reflect back on, this year where you are. And it's like a point of, it's like you're returning to the starting date, right? So that's where your birthday has value. Like the only value it really has in terms of a measuring stick and reminding you of these, it's a way of gauging your success or where you are in life. And so when you're doing really poorly, your birthday is a reminder that you haven't accomplished anything the past year. You haven't done anything. And so, that's what it's good for. My ex was brutal on my birthday. She would pretend to try to make it happen and then like try to provoke me in some way, in some passive aggressive way, and fail, and then make it about herself because that's how she was. And sometimes I would feel like resentful because like I did things to make everybody's birthday good. And, my kids were kind of oblivious in this thing, and my ex, just sucked about it. Then, I thought about it, and I'm like, well, I'm not big into presents. If a present is something that I need, something that I'm going to use, then great. Like if I'm missing something in my life, but it's hard for me to think about, like, what do you want for your birthday? Like when I was a kid, it was toys, and then after that, like, I don't know, right? It's like a chore, and, it's a difficult thing for other people. And, I don't like accumulating, I don't like presents that I'm not going to use. Like I don't like stuff that's just, I don't like the whole opening the packages. I don't like a whole, being the center of attention. Don't like parties, especially like, some sort of surprise birthday party. I more than likely would want to just be kind of on my own or whatever it is. So I realize like I'm a difficult person to give a good birthday to because, there's nothing that I can think of. I want to do something, whatever it is, right? And right now I'm the happiest, most content that I've ever been, right? I'm very happy with my wife, building a homestead and, the work I do here. And so like taking a day off, like I like doing what I do every day, right? I look forward to having things to accomplish or whatever it is. That's why I'm, working on a video today. But anyways, to wrap this one up, so I didn't think much about the 50th birthday, but this one is, like I always thought of 60 as being old. And fortunately for me, I have had a sort of rejuvenation. When I'm doing exercise, I'm like, my one shoulder is kind of hurt, which, there's always something that's hurt when you're older. But I'm able to, I've turned the clock back. Like, I'm better now physically than I was when I turned 50. Of course, that was a downtime. That was the beginning of sort of, because of the divorce and being in India, just the stress and just, the end of a long, if you guys have listened to my journey series, you know what I'm talking about. But anyways, I've turned the clock back at least 10 years to where I'm like in really good shape now. Like I'm, after I had COVID, I've worked to take supplements and do all these things. And anyways, but either way, 60 is old. Like there's no getting around it, right? Because in 20 years, I'll be 80, right? 30 years, I'll be 90. If, my family, my parents and grandparents lived into their 90s, early 90s. One lived to 99. But, like those are not great years. No one looks forward to their 90s, right? And so, I remember my grandmother who lived to 100, she fell down and broke her hip. She was in her 80s, like just fell. It's just how, I just remember them always being old when they were in their 70s, right? So, as a little kid, and she died when I was in my, late 20s, I think. But anyways, like I've reached the part where I'm entering the olden phase. I'm getting some gray hairs, and even though I feel physically better and I've been sort of rejuvenated, I realize that this is, a new phase. Like this is my, it's I've entered into the preparing for death and leaving whatever I'm going to leave behind in terms of my contribution to this planet or not or whatever it is, and it's just a different thing. Like I said, 50 didn't mean anything to me, and I was distracted at the time. But when I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be 60, right? Like I'm old as fuck, right? Anyway, so that's happy birthday. So let's get into the other stuff here. Oh, I forgot to say this. This whole thing about YouTube and fighting the algorithms. My channel's in an uptick. My channel was really dying, and it's doing maybe a little bit better, not as good as I needed to, but it's on the uptick right now, at least for the time being. Of course, it's election year, and I just, argued with some YouTube bots. But if you can remember to subscribe, resubscribe, hit the, you want notifications, bell button, do whatever you can, leave comments, hit, likes, videos, all these things. Let YouTube know that you value the channel, you enjoy the channel, and you want to hear about, be reminded to watch videos on the channel and things like this. I'm getting comments every video now. Multiple comments. Here's one that I did a screenshot. I forgot all about you until you showed back up today on my homepage here and have been subscribed for years. Also, I'm always on YouTube. And then somebody underneath said, same, and 3 or 4 hour video to boot. which is an exclamation point. I guess the person's happy about the longer video. But, bookmarking the channel, putting it, leaving it up on my channel or any channel, you have to do that now because you're not going to get notified. Especially somebody who puts out a lot of content. YouTube, finds a way to, hurt people that are putting out lots of content, even though it helps their platform, because people can't keep up with the content. So YouTube thinks you've lost interest in the channel. Plus, they're already hiding certain kinds of channels anyway, like mine. The point is, you got to do what you got to do to make sure you're receiving content here or connecting with the channel, because shadow banning is real. All right, let's get into the other stuff here. So ABTC let me use a large portion of their video, the interview, which was surprising. I woke up today, I'd uploaded the video late last night, and I made it public, and I was surprised because the interview was so great, maybe in some ways better than the debate. It's clearly an oh boop moment for the Democrats because, they can make any kind of excuse for the debate, and some of the debate was out of Joe Biden's control, and they were saying he had a bad night. But after the interview, which they could control so much of it, right? So the debate, they kind of knew the questions he was going to be asked and the answers that Trump was going to give, because Trump has been talking his talking points on his, in his speeches. Like I knew the answers that both of them were going to give to the various issues, and I barely watch either of them. I knew the talking points, and I knew how they were going to rebut those talking points. And so he failed epically. They prepared him, but he just wasn't prepared. But for the TV interview, he had one subject, and are you senile? Is this episodic, or is this just, a one-off, right? Which we all know it isn't. So just show everybody that you're up to the job and answer these questions. And these are the questions that you're going to get, and you have to answer them, and you can't answer them politically by dismissing them and talking about your accomplishments and what you did 3 years ago. No, that's not, or the past 3 years. You have to address what people are worried about right now is your cognitive abilities. And he failed epically, if you see in the video. When asked if he would take a cognitive test, he said, no, I take one every day when I do my job. And that's not what Sanjay Gupta and others are calling for him to have a cognitive test. He implied that the media and certain people are trying to push him out of his office, even though he was mentally competent, which isn't happening. He was talking about they and them and, the people that, them, they're pushing me out. Well, who is them, right? Who is they? Who are they? Who are you talking about? The media? Some of it was the media. But the the Democratic establishment has been behind him. And he talked about, he couldn't accept that he was losing to Trump right now. And the American people have lost faith in him. And right now, if the election was held today, he thinks it's a toss-up and he would get slaughtered, especially in the swing states. It would be over. And so he was in complete denial and almost seemed puzzled by the questions, like no one even told him that this is what people were thinking. And these were the questions that were coming. And he handled it in the worst possible way by just saying that everybody talking about this is crazy. He's obviously a fit as a fiddle, and that no one should worry about an 81-year-old man who has shown signs of dementia for the past 5 years having a really horrible debate, like the worst debate in history. Embarrassingly so. Like, almost as bad as Fetterman's, and Fetterman had literally just come off a stroke, so there was a bigger excuse. And so he failed. And the Democrats who are spinning, and some of them are, the ones that are behind him, and he's obstinate about not even considering stepping down unless God himself tells him to do so. And so it was bad. It was really bad, right? It was a, horrible debate. And we all know now that the Democratic establishment that isn't his handlers, his direct support team, all want to get rid of this guy. They know they have to get rid of him, not just in terms of whether he can be Trump or not, but he's going to melt down. It's like this is, he can't be president. And they should get rid of him right now as president. Like, he can't do the job. And they all know that, right? And they have no way to do that, right? They're not wanting to be the ones that tell him to do this. He's so oblivious. He's so in denial. They don't have a legitimate replacement. Kamala's a nightmare in herself, in her own, with her own, personality problems and likability issues and all of those things. They don't have somebody that can step in, and, it's going to be messy. I believe that they maybe have known this for a while and have been looking for a way to dump this guy, and they don't know how to do it. Which makes this is the best presidential election and best Democratic convention of all time. I don't think Biden's stepping down. I don't think there's anything they can do to make him step down, and so it's just going to get worse. And then the people are just going to. It's just bad, right? At some point, they're going to have to get behind him, and then they're all, it's a disaster. Trump is very unelectable in various ways, and people have made a decision about Trump, and he's so polarizing, and he gets out the vote both for himself and for his opponent, and whatever that is, and however legitimate the elections is, and whether they want Trump or not. I think they do. I think they want it. I think the powers that be want a second Trump term. But either way, the election went from something where let's not do this again to, oh yeah, this is much better the second time around. It's really entertaining. So let's go to some of these clips here. Okay, so let's start here. This is a short video entitled Biden Stops at Waffle House. It's hard to debate a liar.
Mr. President, how did you perform tonight? I think we did well. Do you have any concerns?
You didn't do well. It was a disaster. You're so clueless about it. This was his interview, not the debate. So I'm editing here, right? And it is the debate. So he came in after the debate and went to Waffle House. And he said he thinks he did pretty well. He doesn't know how badly he did, right? And so this is his break from reality. So Waffle House music.
Your performance tonight. Do you have any concerns about your performance?
Do you have any concerns about your performance?
No, it's hard to debate a liar.
It's hard to debate a liar. So that was his feeling post-debate. I thought this was after the interview, but it looks like it's after the debate. He was saying it was hard to debate a liar. He also said this numerous times during the interview. So he thinks that it's Trump's lies, which of course Biden tells as many or more lies than Trump, although his lies often are in line with the official story. Still, that's his excuse, right? This is a throwback to Biden when he was a younger man.
There are an awful lot of damn fools in the Congress and the Senate and those who want to get there, but
he was always so smug and just a complete reptilian, right?
There's no way you can legislate against that.
Right. But you think in the long run that the American people are going to put up with their money being squandered on all sorts of wild political notions?
The question is, how long is the American public going to put up with a small group of men and organizations determining the political process by deciding who can run and who can't run?
Exactly. Who's going to decide that? This was during the time where he was, shortly after this, where he was going to be a known plagiarizer, which we'll get into that later.
I think what we need to win is we all need to we have to support Joe Biden. And
that's what you got to do. You got to support Joe Biden. It's the guy who had a disastrous debate himself, right?
And I want to address all the other crazy stuff that was happening even before the debate. We're going to abandon Biden, or we're going to walk away, or I'm going to be uncommitted, or that. Well, congratulations.
Congratulations. If you're going to do that, congratulations.
Panicking now after the debate, you were willing to around with this before all that, because we're going to need all in on this.
You need all in on this, you guys.
And if you think you're going to send a message as a Democrat or voting for someone else or throwing away your vote, well, guess what the message was in 2000? That was tanking Gore. And that's 2 terms of Bush. And if you thought
exactly 2000s
you were going to be clever and send a message in 2016 and piss your vote away for somebody like Stein.
Exactly. Pissing your vote away by voting who you want to vote for instead of voting for one of the 2 candidates that they select for you that you don't like and both are horrible. You're going to piss your vote away by voting for somebody outside of those 2 candidates. Then screw you. Congratulations.
Well, congratulations. That got us Trump. So if you want to do this in 2024, if you want to play with that kind of a fire, you're
going to play with that kind of fire.
going to really you really have to own that kind of a
He sometimes confuses the word earn with own.
burn. I think what we need to win.
So that's Fetterman's take on the whole thing. Okay, so this is kind of what I wanted to lead with here. So this is an interview that this person, Pamela Brown, who's a weekend person, she's not on CNN very much because it's a holiday weekend, right? And so, Biden had this interview in which it wasn't going to be seen or dealt with until really Monday. But, she gets David Axelrod here, who's the kind of the campaign manager and White House chief of staff. He was the guy behind Obama's 2 wins, right? He was his political strategist. And he, was commenting on debate night, and it wasn't good what he was saying. But now he's just basically calling for Biden to step down altogether, which we'll get into. I'll show you the interview from the beginning. But this person, Pamela Brown, showed a clip I saw this morning, which I'll show you after this. This is from later on in the afternoon. But she showed this same clip of Biden. Well, let me just show it to you here.
So he was asked by George Stephanopoulos about this prospect of what if you lose to Trump? And here's what he said. Let's listen.
And if you stay in and Trump is elected and everything you're warning about comes to pass, how will you feel in January?
I feel as long as I gave it my all and I did the goodest job as I know I can do. That's what this is about.
Yeah, I'll comment about the gaffe in a second. Let's just watch the end of this here.
This moment we're in right now, do you think Biden is putting country above self?
Yeah, well, this is not what this moment is about. This moment is about exactly what he has described. Donald Trump doesn't believe in rules or laws or norms or institutions. He's already shown that he's willing to flout even the most sacred laws, the most sacred norms of our democracy by trying to overturn a free and fair election. So there's more at stake than whether or not Joe Biden feels at the end of the day that he gave it his all. If his all is not enough, maybe someone else can give more because they have more energy and they have a longer runway in the future.
Okay, so I'm going to get into the whole democracy is at stake with Trump in a bit. But let's go back to the clip itself, right?
To Trump. And here's what he said. Let's listen.
And if you stay in and Trump is elected and everything you're warning about comes to pass, how will you feel in January?
I feel as long as I gave it my all and I did the goodest job as I know I can do. That's what this is about.
So I have to withdraw my all the things I've said about Joe Biden being having dementia and being too old. Clearly he's not too old because he's a 5-year-old and he's just going to do the goodest job he could ever do. If I just do the goodest job I can do, I do the goodest. Yeah, he's going to do the goodest. Do the goodest, Jojo. I didn't see this in the interview. I don't know if they cut this out or I just missed it. But goodest is a word that 5-year-olds use, maybe 6-year-olds. It's a word that your kids used and you used when you were a kid, and you were corrected and said, there's no fucking such thing as goodest, Joe. And so this should tell you everything you need to know, right? He's just going to do the goodest job ever. I mean, you can make gaffes and I mess up words all the time. This happens when you talk a lot. I've said this before. Some of these things are just, you put a microphone in front of people. Like I edit my videos and, sometimes I leave a mistake in here or there and, there's mistakes. You inevitably make mistakes. Sometimes you use the wrong word. Sometimes you don't pronounce something correctly. When you talk a lot, that's going to happen. But goodest, like I wouldn't say goodest. And if I did, I'd be like, holy shit, I just said goodest. because that would concern me if I said goodest.
I feel as long as I gave it my all and I did the goodest job as I know I can do. That's what this is about.
It's not as about. That's what the hokey pokey is all about. And so, it's as bad. And let me show you the clip from this morning. The same person, but CNN is going in hard on Joe Biden, where MSNBC is still going down the middle. They're still supporting him, bringing in people that support him. But, leaning towards, oh, we got to get rid of this guy. He's just, as long as he does the goodest job he could ever do. We'll come back to this interview because it's important, starting from the beginning. But let me show you the clip I had from this morning.
And I did the goodest job as I know I can do. And I did the goodest job as I know I can do. And I did the goodest job as I know I can do.
We look at the week ahead, right? You just heard Arlette break down there, Alex, what President Biden is doing today and in the days ahead to try to turn the page, right, from this moment. Can President Biden's efforts actually turn this around, though?
Well, if you're Democrats, there's a huge disconnect because they all feel that it's been too little, too late. That basically he went through this Thursday debate, then really didn't appear much in public beyond teleprompter remarks, and didn't even do his first on-camera interview for over a week. And now we know that the first two interviews he actually did with two black radio hosts in Philadelphia and Milwaukee were sort of staged affairs where the Biden team basically gave them the questions ahead of time. Now,
before this guy started talking from Axios, Pamela Brown played the clip, this clip.
And I did the goodest job as I know I can do.
And, she played it again later on that day. So they're going after the guy, right? And they talked about this clip. This is what the guy, I forget whatever that guy, Castro, said when he was slamming Biden, the Democratic guy who worked for Obama, in the last video that I made, the previous video. And so he was talking about that clip and that, you can't be saying that it's a possibility you go out and Donald Trump beats you. You have to, lie and say and guarantee and do these things. You can't be like, well, I give it an old college try. I do the goodest job I can do. But now they're getting into how the Biden campaign is handling this guy, right? They're finally saying, this questions are scripted. Like he had a disastrous debate, which they blamed on a cold. He went out and had what seemed to be a infomercial type paid over enthusiastic audience. Like, what's that show? They're like over the top. The Masked Singer. Like, it was that kind of an audience cheering for Joe Biden. Like, this is completely staged. And, some kind of Beatles thing, right? Where the girls were tearing their hair out. Like that kind of level of enthusiasm. And so they're handling this guy. And they've been doing it for a while, but now they're finally admitting it, which is going to cause problems later on. Let's get back to it here, though.
What you're going to probably see this next week is probably a lot more Democrats in Congress call for him to either step aside or sort of insinuate, well, it's his idea, it's his choice, whatever he wants to do. Now, the thing is that Joe Biden may not care. Because the thing you have to understand about Joe Biden and his inner circle is they firmly believe, it is a commandment in Biden world, that he is the most electable Democrat against Donald Trump. And if you believe that, then that's all that sort of really matters. No, even if other people call you to get out, if you believe that to your core, why would you get out?
Right. And you heard that time and time again from President Biden in this interview with ABC, where he said, multiple times, I will beat him. I'm the man for the job. He was also asked, though, well, what if you don't win? What if you don't beat Trump, right? How are you going to feel? What is that going to do for your legacy? Let's take a listen at that moment from the ABC interview.
And if you stay in and Trump is elected and everything you're warning about comes to pass, how will you feel in January?
I feel as long as I gave it my all and I did the goodest job as I know I can do. That's what this is about.
So did that inspire confidence among Democrats that he's aware of the stakes so on?
No. I mean, in fact, it prompted anxiety amongst many Democrats I talked to, as well as Democratic donors, as well as just even voters talking to them over the past couple days.
Way to bring back the tie top fade. So before that, she said this. Again, they're going in hard at him.
Inside Politics Sunday, I'm Pamela Brown in for Manu Raju.
Okay, raise your hand if you know who Manu Raju is, right? Because you don't. I mean, most of you don't. I don't. I kind of maybe do because, I cover this stuff, but I kind of don't. Like, I think I've seen him. I'd be like, oh, yeah, that guy. But I don't know who he is. So think about this. She's the girl that replaces the guy that you never frickin' heard of. So that's some of the advantage that Biden has with this holiday weekend coming right after the debate. People are distracted by their own lives and 4th of July and things like this, right? And most of the news media is on some sort of vacation. And you have, like that guy Velshi, he was pulling triple duty. He usually works on the weekends. So people don't watch the news on the weekend. She's replacing the guy who does the weekend news with a epic political situation here, right?
Well, this morning, President Biden is set to hit the trail again, taking a defiant stance amid growing calls for members of his own party to drop out of the race. The president's Friday interview with ABC News doing little to calm those nerves. And while most members of his party have not broken with the president publicly, there are signs that could change. The top Democrat in the House, Hakeem Jeffries, is convening senior Democrats this afternoon to talk about the president's future, a day before members of Congress return to Washington after their holiday break. And a source tells CNN Democratic Senator Mark Warner, the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, plans to gather senators tomorrow to discuss Biden's re-election bid. The White House and campaign team are racing to regain Democrats' shrinking confidence.
Okay, so I want to get back into all these clips. I want to show you the ones from MSNBC where they're kind of semi-supporting Joe. I mean, they brought in people that are supporting him at least, right? Joe Magoo. Mr. Magoo, like I called him Mr. Magoo years ago, and now like he's showing you what he is, right? He's Mr. Magoo. And so the first thing I want to say is that interview was worse than a debate because, the debate was performance-oriented, but the interview showed you what his inner world was, what his inner reality is, right? So when I worked as a counselor, and I guess now what the job I do now in terms of YouTube, and when I worked as a preceptor and, a volunteer position in the Sajmark meditation system, and what I do as a meditator, when I go inside and I meditate and do cleaning and, you see what's inside of you, like as you get older, you start seeing beliefs you have and, events that maybe influenced what you have, your view of the world, right? If you had, somebody cheat on you and you go into another relationship and you're overly suspicious because of the previous relationship and you realize you have been damaged in some way because of people cheating on you or betraying you and you have trust issues, right? Those are things that are inside of you. And your personal lens in which you see the world, and it warps your ability to see reality. And so going inside and figuring out what people are, all about and what they believe and who they are as a person. And with Joe Biden, they've been able to kind of shield you from that because what do they talk about? Trump, 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 Trump. And Joe Biden's really talking about himself when he's talking about Trump. Like I said in my last video, he's very similar. But we know from this interview that Joe Biden is not watching the same movie as everybody else. That Joe Biden is not even close to being on the same page. He's not acknowledging publicly or internally what the American people are saying. He's blaming it on they and them, saying that they're trying to get him out of the race. And he's not reality based on his age. He's saying all these things about David Axelrod is going to get into this as well. He's saying things about his job performance, not about his cognitive abilities. When he was asked about his cognitive abilities, he talked about all the great things he's done as president, which is debatable, but that has nothing to do, it's debatable whether they were great things or not. But his performance as president has nothing to do with his cognitive abilities, right? He's in complete denial. He's hostile about it, and he's not willing to look at any information. He's not willing to get cognitive tests. And so once in a while you sit down and have like a hard conversation with somebody. And part of it is you're gauging whether the person has any grasp on what an asshole they are. You know, like, do they understand what's going on? Are they at least have any self-awareness? Are they, reality-based in what they're seeing? And he clearly isn't, right? Like, he doesn't acknowledge any of these things. And we just saw it when in the Waffle House when asked what kind of performance. He said it was pretty good. Like, it was considered the worst debate performance in history. And it, cemented in so many people's minds that this guy has dementia. But aside from his dementia, or, I guess it's part of it, his ability to perceive reality is completely warped. And he has no idea how bad this thing is. He has no idea what people are feeling or thinking. And, people are freaking out. Like, the Democrats are freaking out over this, as well as the news media. The other thing I want to say is, I've given two possibilities in my other videos. One is that they did their best to prepare this guy, but he's too far gone. And, they just, they didn't want to see it go this way, but they couldn't help it. Or that they rolled him out there just so he could perform badly, so they could get rid of him, because they know he's not up to the task. But there's a third possibility for the people who are in the Biden team, and that is they want you to accept a senile president. That it's okay that you have a senile president. And they did this with Fetterman. Fetterman was not mentally competent. He's not mentally competent now, right? Fetterman was, he had a stroke, which was precipitated by his stress at running for the Senate. And then he had the worst debate performance in history up until, I guess, this thing with Joe Biden. Maybe it was even worse because of, at least you could say he had a stroke. So, there was, and it was for Senate. And he was debating Dr. Oz, who sucked, right? And the Biden team was like, they got caught on an open mic saying, I don't think the debate is going to hurt us. Like, they realized that his disastrous debate in Pennsylvania didn't drop him any points in the polls, Fetterman, right? But then Fetterman got sworn in as senator, or was going to get sworn in as senator, but he had a mental breakdown, was suicidal, and he missed like holidays and kids' birthdays, and they couldn't believe he was doing this because why aren't you happy that you won and were in the Senate? And so he had this breakdown immediately, was hospitalized, and so it was his first weeks on the job, and he was a no-show. So it took him 3 months to finally be able to do the job he was elected for, and he needed all these apparatuses, all these devices, because everybody talking to him confuses him. He can't understand people when they're talking to him, right? And so he still has a job, and he shouldn't. Like, he's not competent. And so maybe they're pushing this senile president on everybody and saying he's still better than Donald Trump. I mean, that could be, at least some group of people is pushing this idea that maybe Americans will accept that this is okay. That, he's disabled and it's ageism to push this poor old guy out. He can still do the job, some of the times, when he's not pooping his depends and, drooling on himself. And so that's where we are right now, right? Those are the three possibilities. One, they were sabotaging him because they knew he was too far gone. Two, they just couldn't help it. He had to do a debate, and they rolled him out here, and, this wasn't something, I mean, the media was already turning on him, so it seems a little bit that's not the case. But this last possibility that, they're actually expecting that you accept this as, American people have eaten a lot of crap, eaten a lot of shit the last so many years. And maybe they're just like, all right, maybe they'll eat this too. I don't know. Let's put it in front of them, see what they do. Like Survivor. Let's put this, this dementia-ridden candidate in front of them, see if they eat it, right? See if they bite on it. So let's start here with David Axelrod, the beginning part of that interview.
Seems to me I have a choice. I have to choose between running for president and doing my job, keep the Supreme Court from moving in a direction that I believe to be truly harmful.
So that was then Senator Joe Biden dropping out of his first bid for the White House nearly 4 decades ago. And now...
Okay, so that was when he plagiarized, right? Let me show you the memes I have. but when he admitted to being dumb and stupid. But he got caught stealing people's life story and saying it was his life story. And he did it a number of times. Like he caught plagiarizing a number of times. And so he was already not going to win. Like he had no chance of winning. He wasn't even close. He ran for president 3 more times and he lost. I mean, he didn't even get votes. Like he had to drop out before even the primaries began. But here he was saying, like he was somehow going to stop the Supreme Court from becoming Republican oriented and reverse Roe v. Wade back in the 80s, right? But he was a joke then. He was a joke every time he ran, and then he was a joke as the vice president. And then all of a sudden, people forgot all about that stuff, especially CNN, who ran a hit piece on him, which I showed you earlier in video, in 2015 when he was going to run against Hillary, and they brought out all of his negatives, and there are lots of them. But in 2019, they decided to run this guy, even though he was showing signs of dementia, and he had a bad history of snoozling, groping, and sniffing, and all these other things, right?
Now, Biden finds himself in a new moment that could define his legacy. And joining us now to discuss the latest developments this weekend is CNN senior political commentator and former senior advisor to President Obama, David Axelrod. David, nice to see you. So right after President Biden's interview aired Friday, you posted on X that he is dangerously out of touch. Why do you say that?
Dangerously out of touch.
Well, because listening to the interview, he seemed to deny where he is in the race. He seems not to grasp what is the big concern that people have. Let me just say about the president, Pam, that his whole life he is over.
Like, what's happening here? Is she going in some kind of, is he a robot that's gone in some kind of a trance? So David Axelrod is somebody that carries a lot of weight because in some ways he was one of Joe Biden's handlers when he was a senior advisor for Obama. He was Obama's strategy guy and one of the key election guys that Obama had. And so he was part of that team. He's going to talk about that a little bit, right? And so he, was basically seeing that this was over. He said he was the most mild person. Remember, I covered the debate coverage after the debate, and he was the most mild person. But he was clear that, this was over, right? Because people were looking to see if Joe Biden was up to the task, and that debate showed you that he wasn't. And it was over. Voters, it's over for the voters, it's over for the donors, right? All these people. We'll get into that. They're all bailing on him now. And this interview cemented this idea that the guy is not watching the same movie as everybody else, right? They're all seeing it.
Overcome tremendous loss and tremendous odds. I mean, his personal loss is well known, extraordinary and horrible, and he's fought his way back from that. He's fought his way back from political defeats and against the odds. And so his psyche is that he can beat anybody and any long odds. What he can't beat is Father Time, and that's really the concern here.
So he's thinking that Joe Biden's psyche is that, I'm always question his first wife dying. I mean, he just seems so reptilian and heartless, right? But whatever, tragedy or not. I mean, the guy is just, he's the slime of the earth, right? But somehow he's just stuck around. Like he came from a small state. He was elected. That was him at 29. Like he was bald when he was 29, and somehow now he has more hair. Of course, he's got the Crypt Keeper mullet. But the guy thinks that maybe he's blessed or something like that. I guess he is because he sucks and he's been a senator for years, a vice president, now a president.
It's not about his record. Every time he's asked about whether he can do the job until he's closer to 90 than 80, he says, well, look at what I did the last 4 years. That's just not the way it works. Donald Trump is a almost unprecedentedly precedently a flawed candidate in so many ways and represents, I do believe, as the president says, a real danger to democracy. But
So I want to say this about, I just can't let this slip because, I wanted to make this about Biden. Trump sucks. And I've talked about why Trump sucks and, how he let his followers down and how his followers are delusional. Much like Biden is delusional about his own capacity, Trump and Trump's people are delusional about Trump, right? And, I think all these people have a sense that they're divinely anointed and they're clearly not. But as much as they want to say Trump is a threat to democracy, and like he said that thing about trying to overturn an election, so the Democratic Party and the media froze out Joe Biden from running against Hillary Clinton, right? They did a hit piece, which I showed you. They froze Joe Biden out. Like he had a chance. He was polling at like 16%, Hillary at 40%, but he was their biggest challenger. But they just decided to pick Hillary, and that's not democracy, right? And so then she goes to run against Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders has a legitimate chance to beat her. Let me switch over to a voiceover here. But when Obama won in 2012, he left the DNC $12 million in debt, which the kind of money that they raise isn't a big deal, but it was back then. And the DNC, they had Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who was a nightmare. Of course, she was going to get hacked. She got hacked. The DNC got hacked. Podesta got hacked, right? And Podesta was a guy who wrote a paper for Obama about cybersecurity. So that shows you what the kind of, Debbie Wasserman Schultz gets fired. Podesta gets, whatever he got. And they were in debt. And Hillary Clinton came in and said, I'll bail you guys out, but I want the nomination. Because Hillary already had, millions of, hundreds of millions of dollars. She raised eventually $1 billion. So she owned the DNC. And the reason we know this is because when Debbie Wasserman Schultz got fired, they put this woman, Donna Brazile, in. And Donna Brazile wrote a, book, and she wrote about this very subject. And she said that Hillary was getting preferential treatment in the debates. She was getting foreknowledge of questions that were going to be asked. They were pushing the moderators to ask questions that she wanted, and they were rigging the election for her, and they were pushing back against Bernie Sanders. And when she found out all of this, she wrote to Bernie Sanders and said, or she called him and she said, you got screwed. They rigged it against you. And his response was, can she win? And she said, well, she's up in the polls against Trump, which were manipulated, we now know. But her crowds were so unenthused, she couldn't get very many people to turn out to see her, and she had very unenthusiastic crowds. And so Donna Brazile outed them for rigging the election against Bernie Sanders. That was out and out rigging the election and democracy, right? Which they're just doing now when they make the moderators ask Joe Biden set questions. I talked about this with Heartfulness and Dodgy. This meditation that I do, Sajmarg meditation, has been hijacked by the current disastrous master of the system. And he gets these people to interview him, and they are asking him questions that, he gives them to ask, right? That's not journalism, it's deceptive. They're not asking him the tough questions, and they're not asking Joe Biden the tough questions. And even when they're asking him these questions, he still gets the answers wrong. It's like you've been told the question beforehand for a test at school, and you have all this time to study and get the answer right, and you memorize the question, and you should memorize the answer, and you still screw it up, and you still fail the test, right? And that's what's happened with Biden. So they rigged it against Bernie Sanders, against Hillary. And so this is David Axelrod saying Trump is the threat to democracy. But then they ran Joe Biden. And Joe Biden was polling at 20%. It seemed like he was the front runner. He was polling higher than anybody else. But when people were forced to vote, because they didn't like any of the candidates, they really didn't like Kamala because she had to quit. And so they show up in New Hampshire, and even though Biden's got the lead in terms of the polls, they don't want to vote for him. So they vote for Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg. And they come in 1 and 2. You know, one of them won one state and the other one was second in Iowa and New Hampshire. And so Biden comes in 4th and 5th. Amy Klobuchar beat him. Somebody else beat him, Elizabeth Warren or somebody. And so he's 4th and 5th, right? He has the most money. He's the anointed candidate, and they don't want Bernie Sanders. And so the Democratic Party goes into full panic mode because they know they can't win with a socialist, and Bernie Sanders has the most enthusiasm. So they rig the election against Bernie Sanders right in front of everybody on TV. They come out, senators are saying, we cannot let Bernie Sanders win. And so what they did is get Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg to bow out. Pete Buttigieg was already out of money and support Joe Biden. Well, before that, they rigged it in South Carolina when this guy, that Senator Clyburn comes in, and he gets Joe Biden a win in South Carolina. So that's the third primary. So Joe Biden comes back to life a little bit. And Clyburn says, you have to restructure your campaign. Like, we bailed you out here, but you got to restructure your campaign. Because he had the no malarkey campaign, right? It's just, that's how bad it was. And he had all these gaffes, and he was showing signs of senior moments. And so they get Buttigieg and Klobuchar to withdraw and back Biden. And Elizabeth Warren, who was running on Bernie Sanders' platform, stays in. And so Biden wins Super Tuesday, and because they rigged it against Bernie Sanders, because they're moving pieces around the board to screw Bernie Sanders out of a potential win. And all these liberals are getting pissed off at seeing this, the Bernie Sanders fans, but they hate Trump so much, they're scared of Trump, they're willing to vote for him anyway. And that's how the Democrats win, when they scare the people about the other guy, because the Democrats can never go full liberal. They have to go moderate, and the liberals always get pissed off. And the Democratic Party has more potential voters, but they have, they're all, they don't like each other. The different groups that they've compiled together are often, oppositional. So they go into the election with Trump, and COVID kicks in because Joe Biden can't campaign because he's got dementia. And so they can't roll him out, and, there's no enthusiasm for him either. And so what they do is they force a lockdown. They pressure Trump to do a lockdown. And now Joe Biden can be hidden away. And then they change this rule from they add all these mail-in ballots, which ends up costing Trump the election. And so, I'm a little bit, I don't know how I feel about whether it was rigged or not. It certainly didn't play out that way. Trump felt it was rigged, but Trump always, whatever it is. And people say Joe Biden couldn't have gotten 80 million votes. No, he couldn't. But there are 80 million people that would vote against Trump, right? There's no question about it. Trump is the devil to so many people. So, I don't know exactly what happened in that, whatever happened at the end of the election. But it's clear that there was election rigging and anti-democratic behavior by the Democratic Party for the last so many years. So to call Trump a threat to democracy, and then Joe Biden goes to all these social media companies. This came out in, I guess it was something like Mississippi and Louisiana, and they had these court cases that sued Joe Biden for manipulating social media. And he went to these social media companies, and these companies have this rule, this Title whatever rule, that says they can't be sued for libel or anything else that's posted on their platforms. And without this rule, these companies, these social media giants can't exist. Without this, this advantage that they have, right? This, this title, whatever it is. And Joe Biden threatened that title, which is, his people there. So he's running a, like a dictatorship where they're trying to censor social media. This is all the stuff that's affecting us all here in the truth community. So to say that Trump is the one that's a threat to democracy, and I'm not saying Trump isn't, but Joe Biden is equally as bad or worse, right? And the Democratic Party is the one that, the people behind the throne, the power of the throne, who are pushing this agenda are, behind Biden. And so, it's a complete lie here. Okay, so let's get back to this interview here. Calls for the Democrats for Biden to drop out increase. Smear Kanish, Biden dropping out has increased feeling of, I don't know where it goes with that, but they are pushing for this now, right? Like it's over for him. But he might not go. Like that's the next phase. But let's get back into this here.
The one person that no one can outrun is Father Time. Mm-hmm. You know, Tom Brady won a Super Bowl 3 years ago, and he's out of football. Okay, why? Doesn't detract from his greatness or what he's done. It's just there are certain immutable facts of life, and those were painfully obvious on that debate stage. And the president just doesn't seem to he hasn't come to grips with it. He's not winning this race.
He has dementia. See, they don't want us to use the D word. You know, this is dementia gate, right? And they don't want to use the D word, but he has dementia because, you know, some of it is he's in denial. It's personality and the way he is. He's an evil, you know, he's like Trump, right? He doesn't listen to anybody else, very arrogant, very myopic. He's not somebody with any mental flexibility. Neither one of them looks inside and is self-reflective and try to better themselves, right? They're not looking for self-improvement. This is why Trump and Biden are so much alike, because they don't look for, to better themselves. They look to manipulate the circumstance around them and force people to adhere to their worldview. That, okay, Mr. Trump, like he was a billionaire. They look for people to kiss their ass and tell them how great they are. And not, they're not looking at their life and saying, oh, this is something I have to change inside myself, right? You know, something I've learned from meditating is if I feel anger or hatred, that's mine. You know, that's the hatred inside of me, the anger inside of me, whatever the feelings are. And then I have to remove it. Like if I find something in my system, I'm having thoughts about this or that, aren't the kind of person I want to be. And so when you meditate and especially when you do the Sajmarg meditation that I do, gratefulness meditation, you have to, look at yourself and improve your character and, get rid of the things you don't want. You have to take a hard look at what's inside of you. And neither of these guys do that, right? And most of these people don't. Most of these politicians, they're just on the, they're better at it, right?
He's more likely, if you just look at the data and talk to people around the country, political people around the country, it's more likely that he'll lose by a landslide than win narrowly this race. And if the stakes are as large as he says, and I believe they are, then he really needs to consider what the right thing to do here is.
It's interesting.
So that's a big statement. Like, I'm not looking at the political numbers, but he's saying he might lose by a landslide more than he'd have a chance of winning. It's more likely that he's going to get crushed. I mean, right now, of course, things could change and they could set Trump up. We don't know how this is going to play out. But you could have a senile president who's completely cut off from reality. Like that's what they're saying here. And he has to be handled so much that he is not running the country because he can't.
Interesting because you mentioned, the fact that there's nothing you can do about age. It only goes in one direction, right?
Look, Biden on potential loss to Trump, I feel as long as I gave it my all, ... You mean do my goodest? You guys got rid of do my goodest? You didn't want to write here the full quote, do my goodest, right? Because, you're still protecting the guy. He said he wanted to do his goodest. If he did his goodest, he would win. Like that,
Right. And what this comes down to is public perception as well. And a lot of people bring up, well, Trump is only a few years behind Biden. But when you look at the public perception in the polls, 42% of those polled said that Trump would be too old for office. 70.
And, that's democracy right there. I mean, polls are, elections are polls. Like they're just people voting in a poll-like situation. They call them polls, right? And so if the majority of people think he's too old to do the job, why aren't the Democrats and, Congress and the Republicans and the Senate and in Congress trying to move to get rid of the guy, right? Like he's too old. He has dementia. There's protocols that can, the 25th Amendment or whatever, or they could just pressure him to leave. But, this needs to be said. They should just come out and say it, right? Like, you guys won't even say it. That the guy's too freaking old. He has dementia. Like, he's saying Father Time. Yeah, he's gone and he can't do the job anymore.
74% said that about Biden. And you have to wonder, we played that clip of when Joe Biden, when he was, then senator, dropped out of the presidential race in 1987. I was speaking to Evan Osnos, that Biden biographer, recently, and he said, he was pushed out of politics then. He's not going to be pushed out of politics.
He wasn't pushed out of politics. He plagiarized. Like, he plagiarized, right? He had a scandal, and back then that was a big deal. Like, now, yeah, of course we've lowered our standards, but he stole people's life stories and pretended it was his life story in speeches and misrepresented himself to the American people, and he had to back down and get out in a way that was like embarrassing, right?
Politics again.
Yes.
That is one of the driving factors here of why he's digging in his heels. Is that how you see it as well? What else do you think is at play here with what you think is sort of a state of denial?
He should not view it as being pushed out of politics. Look, Pam, I really have a very high regard for Joe Biden. I served with him in the White House. I thought he was a great vice president. I was glad every day that he was there. He was an important voice in the Obama administration.
Come on, bro.
I think he's done some historically important things, and history will be much kinder to him than voters are being right now. But the question is, what will his reputation be like? What will his legacy be if he persists in this race and loses badly, which is really possible at this point? We elect presidents by the Electoral College. I know there are some polls that speak otherwise, but I've looked at a ton of data, and no one in those states who is knowledgeable would say he's ahead in any of the battleground states. But now you have states like Virginia, Minnesota, Maine. The governors of New Mexico and Maine reportedly told him in that meeting last week that they're not sure he can carry their states, which were presumed to be in his column.
So if he loses New Mexico and Maine, like, it's a landslide. Like, he'll get obliterated.
So he could lose and take the House and the Senate with him. That's not the legacy that he wants.
Well, I'd like to see it, even though just as a show. So that's the CNN, and I'll show you some more stuff with CNN. But let's go to MSNBC. Now, MSNBC has had some people that want him to withdraw, but Mika and Joe and all these people, they're not pushing as hard for it, and they're bringing a lot of people in and saying, just stick with Joe Biden.
Back and sort of looking at each other going, where the hell are we and why is it happening this way? I mean, talk to us about the president's response in the interview, but also give your sense of why all this is happening still a week after the debate.
So there is a question as to whether or not all of this conversation about about Joe Biden is the sign of a healthy party. This is not 2007, where we're in a primary between Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton and have a year or 2 years to watch these amazing figures unfold policy-wise, politically in front of us. We're 4 months from a general election, and millions of voters have already cast their vote for Joe Biden. If you have concerns about his age, I think that's already baked into the voter at this point. But to me, what is not being addressed is the real fear and worry, concern that the individual voter has about their future right now. And what didn't happen after the debate, you can talk about whether or not Joe Biden accomplished what he needed to in that debate.
And we certainly have.
And we certainly have. But to me, the response should have been, as Senator Fetterman has done, I support my guy, and here's why I support my guy. And if you have a concern about what's on the other side, let me tell you about what the choice is here. I'm going to frame this choice for you.
Right.
And instead, what has happened is all of this worry and concern openly about Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And my problem with
he had a disastrous breakdown, and that's kind of what the story is. And then this woman comes in here.
And I mean, I watched the interview last night, and I'm looking at the reactions, and I think that there is I mean, y'all correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I think there's this circular thing happening. There is the reaction of, I like to say, the political professionals, the elected officials, the donors, right? And I understand why elected officials feel some type of way. Their names are on the ballot, especially if you are a House member this fall, and everybody wants to win. But then there's the donors, there's the political professionals, the strategists, right? And then there's the voters. And I think that and also there is the media apparatus and the reporters who have been covering the president, who are looking at this race and who are hearing from some of the aforementioned individuals. It feels to me like the political professionals and the media
She has a job there, and she's having trouble getting this. She has a show on MSNBC, and she can't get to the point here.
apparatus coverage can influence what the voters think or believe to be true, right?
Yeah, so she's saying that the media and all these people are influencing the voters to believe that Joe Biden is senile, when they themselves were polled about it. And that's what they do all the time. You guys influence people, right? The media and the politicians, right? That's...
So when you talk to people, because I talked to, Melissa Murray and I went to Pennsylvania and talked to black women right after the debate happened, that Sunday after, and the majority of the women in the room were like, I'm going to stick with Joe Biden. I think we should stick with Joe Biden. There were some folks who said after the debate, I thought everybody should drop out. But I'm wondering now, and in the coming weeks, as you speak to voters, will they be influenced in their thoughts about what they believe to be true about the coverage of it and what the donor...
He's senile. He's got dementia, right? He has dementia, and it's something bigger than that. It's your job to make sure you report on this, because you guys have been hiding his dementia and hiding his incompetence and hiding his poor character and hiding his scumbaggery because of your hatred for Trump, right? And this is, to say after what you've just seen that, I mean, if the American people can't see it, then, there's no hope at all, right? I mean, if the Democratic voters are so blinded by their hatred for Trump that they're willing to elect a senile president, then there's no hope. They're like, you throw in the towel, right? So this is a representative from somewhere in America.
I am. I'm in New Orleans at Essence, where the vice president is also currently making her rounds as well. Let me tell you, the difference...
Texas.
Between the Democrats and the Republicans could not be more stark in so many ways. One of those ways that I think about is the fact that even those Democrats that are calling for the president to step aside, they're not calling for the president to step aside because they think that Joe Biden's a terrible person, because they think that he's a failure. They're calling for him to step aside because they are scared. One thing that I think we all...
And he's senile. He has dementia.
All are united in, no matter where you stand, is our fear. Our fear that somehow Donald Trump can get back into the White House. Our fear that the Supreme Court will absolutely end up becoming even worse, because we know that Donald Trump plans to put 2 more Supreme Court justices on that court and give them lifetime appointments. Our fear, because we know the reality.
It's not about Trump. Again, this is the one thing that isn't about Trump. There's nothing to do with Trump in this thing. This is Biden's mental competence. And, whether he can beat Trump or not, I guess that's part of it. But that's neither here nor there. It's not whether he can beat Trump. It's whether he's mentally competent to do the job, and he's not. He's gone. He's oblivious to his own situation, right? As a political candidate and as his mental capacity, he's in denial, and he's forcefully pushing back against the reality that's closing in on him, right?
Of what they are seeking in Project 2025. And so the only thing that I'm asking everyone to do is to unite around the ticket. The ticket at this point in time is Biden and Harris. And so long as the president says that he can do this job, then that is our ticket. We have a democratic process. We went through...
Yeah, and that's your job also, to see that he has dementia and protect the American people and the country from the catastrophe that is Joe Biden. Of course, they're acknowledging that he isn't running the country because he's obviously got dementia. So they're saying it doesn't matter if someone else will handle him and run. So they're the ones who are saying democracy is, yeah, because if your president's not legitimate and your president's completely handled and he's not doing the job American people elected him to do, then, there's no democracy. Which, of course, there isn't, right? Democracy is an illusion. And it's a good thing because democracy sucks. Like, look at the people, go to Walmart or go to various places and see what the American people are all about. They don't have the capacity. I mean, just talk to your sheeple relatives or even your truther relatives or your truther friends, and they don't have the capacity to see reality on a high enough level where they can make correct choices. I mean, look at the bad choices that we all have made in our lives. All of us who have been divorced, right? Like the bad choices. And if you don't learn from your bad choices and bad decisions, which most people don't, then you really aren't going to be able to pick a president or anybody else, right? This is Democratic Representative Mike Quigley calls on Biden to step aside.
Joining me now, Congressman Mike Quigley, Democrat of Illinois. Congressman, how you doing?
I've been better.
You look a little bit droopy, dog.
After watching all this.
Yeah, well, what do you think?
It was a horrible night.
The debate.
Yes. And everything's not okay. I know people's instinct is to be loyal, and I appreciate that. I know their instinct is to be a cheerleader, but that's not helpful. We need folks who are willing to understand where we are and what we have to do. And that is extraordinarily difficult. But you do it under the specter of a second Trump term, right? Hey, and I was in the room on January 6th. The second Trump term is a continuation of the last days of his first term, which is a nightmare in every respect. So I don't think they're helping anyone.
Who's they?
Those who cheer on and think, oh, everything's going to be okay with where President Biden is. This is hard to do. I would rather be doing anything else. I'd rather be out in the Midwest talking to.
Like, look at he's got dementia. Look at his fucking face, you guys. Like, I mean, look at him. That guy. That's your president right there.
Diaspora about what a second Trump term means to Ukraine.
You have been probably, I would say, the most strenuous advocate on behalf of the Ukrainian people in the U.S. Congress.
Yeah, you suck, Quigley.
Your district has a huge part of the Ukrainian diaspora. It's something you feel deeply about.
It's extraordinary because
So he just watched the interview, and they were commenting on it.
I know what happened. Last time I was in Ukraine, we met with.
Let's just get to the point here.
All support out, and this is all but done.
Okay, so those are the stakes, both for American democracy, for Ukrainian democracy. So what do you think should happen? I mean, there are Raul Grijalva, Seth Moulton, and Lloyd Doggett of Texas have explicitly said on the record they think the president should step aside and allow someone else to run. Do you agree with them?
I started the week doing an interview where I was talking about everything else.
Yes, you agree with it.
And then this came up, and I asked for help to get the words out. And I couldn't help because it's like talking to a loved one about such a tough situation. A man who pulled us out of COVID.
Oh, my God, just say the frickin' stuff.
Showing them that deference.
Okay, well, he says, let someone else do this.
In a week when we're focusing on elections, we begin with a campaign that's been blown to smithereens. Joe Biden.
This is Al Jazeera.
Biden's. The debate that changed everything and where the story in the U.S. goes from here. France appears set to usher in a new...
Okay, let's get to the Joe Biden thing.
He's away from you now.
Look beyond the chaos and confusion of a story that has captivated Washington.
This is called How the Media Turned on Joe Biden.
And you will find elements that go to the core of the state of America's vaunted democracy and the way politics there are reported. Starting with the herd mentality of the White House press corps. It spent most of President Joe Biden's first term shying away from a topic that was all over social media, the unmistakable signs of Biden's cognitive decline.
Boom. Al Jazeera bringing it.
He is sharp, intensely probing.
Okay, so this obviously the guy's, saying this has gone on for a while, but this is Al Jazeera, right? And the mainstream media isn't going to cover this.
Let's bring in NBC News. Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles. Ryan, what's the very latest?
Well, Mika, Joe, I think there's no doubt that this is going to be a crucial week for the president, with both the House and the Senate returning to Capitol Hill after more than 2 weeks over the 4th of July holiday. And of course, we spent a lot of time talking to many of these Democrats in both the House and the Senate to get their pulse of what comes next from Joe Biden. And what I think you really see playing out here is that there are very few congressional Democrats, as evidenced by the fact that only about 6 or 7 of them have come forward publicly stating that they want Joe Biden to get out of the race. But there's a lot more that are saying it privately. They don't want to get into a position where they publicly have to get into a confrontation with Joe Biden. And what I was most struck by in my conversations with Democrats after the interview on Friday night with George Stephanopoulos was that the president seemed dug in, and that frustrated a lot of these House Democrats in particular, because they don't want to get into a standoff with Joe Biden. And if it gets to the point where they have to come out publicly, if Chuck Schumer, if Hakeem Jeffries, if other congressional leaders have to come out to the cameras and publicly tell Joe Biden that it's time to step down, then the race might already be lost, because then that puts them into a position where if Joe Biden doesn't step down, that will be used against him as the campaign moves forward. It's going to be used as an attack by Republicans, and the Democratic Party is going to be in a very difficult situation.
So this is from Morning Joe, and it's going to get worse. He's going to say things that I thought about during the interview when he was saying that that's not going to happen, that Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and these other leaders aren't going to come to him and ask him to leave the race. He said, well, that's not going to happen. And it's like an implied threat, and I'll get back to that in a moment, right? But the Democrats are in a horrible situation, because this is, a blemish on their credibility. And I don't know how many people pick it up or not. And of course, these elections are all rigged to whatever extent they are, but and I don't know if they want Trump in or not. Like, who knows what the underlying reason for this is. But them trying to get rid of Joe Biden right now is a disaster. And every day he stays in is a disaster, because he's just not there anymore. And they're just waiting for the next embarrassing senior moment. And he's clueless and oblivious, and the people around him aren't pushing him to get out. And he might not get out. And they have no leverage. They unless they can get the Republicans to help them invoke the 25th Amendment and get him out of the presidency, which would be a disaster as well. And now they're on the hook for being, accountable for having this guy, running this guy, and propping this guy up when he clearly wasn't up for the task. And it's just there, right? Like, it's what I've been saying. And the fact that they're talking about him getting out, like, why would he get out other than he's senile? Like, they said he's done such a great job. And so their only issue with him, with all the Democrats and the media and the voters, is that he's too old. And so if they're saying that he needs to go, just as some people are, and we saw the debate, that means he needs to go, right? Like, he needs to go. Like, he's just too old. Because otherwise this wouldn't even be a conversation. And so they're so frickin' screwed right now. Because, why didn't you guys do it earlier? Why did you guys allow this to go on? How long has he been like this? I mean, these are the questions people will ask. And maybe not all of them, but you just need if you take 2% if 2% of the population, the voters, are concerned about this and ask those questions, that's enough to give Donald Trump a landslide, right? Like, that's how bad it is. He's got less enthusiasm. Let's say they didn't cheat. Let's say he did get 80,000 votes in the last election. He ain't getting 80,000 votes this time, because he just can't. Like, he's lost people because he's a known commodity. Like, that was going to happen anyway. And now all this stuff with senility. So they are so screwed. Like, I mean, it's great to see how screwed they are. That's probably the best thing. Like, just, there's no winning for them, right? They're boxed into just a horrible situation. Not that I want Trump, and I wish Trump would just go away. And Trump actually is commenting, which I'll get into in a moment. He's, doing Trump stuff. But, yeah, this is great.
What you see playing out here, and I had many Democrats say this to me over and over again, is this family conversation. There's a family conversation obviously happening within the Biden family itself, but there's also a family conversation that's taking place in both the House Democratic caucus and in the Senate Democratic caucus, where each one of these members is getting a sense of just how urgent they think the situation is. Is it desperate enough where there needs to be this meeting at the White House with these congressional leaders where they plead with Joe Biden to step down? Do they continue this campaign where they subtly try and convince him to do the right thing, as many of them have said, and step out on his own accord? Or do they just take a step back and retreat and allow this to play itself out? This is the answer to that question. I don't think really is going to be determined until they all get into rooms this week and have this out behind closed doors and really begin to talk about what they think is the best path forward.
So they're screwed, right? Because he's bullying them. Let me get to this other piece here.
I think it's very important to read between the lines about this outreach that the president himself has had to many of these congressional Democrats, particularly in leadership, and with Hakeem Jeffries, with Chuck Schumer, with Jim Clyburn, and others. The president said in that interview on Friday night that they told him to stay in, that many of them told him to stay in. And I don't know if that's completely accurate. I don't think that any of them have specifically told him to get out, but there seems to be this chasm between what they actually want to have happen and what they're willing to actually say to him to get to that point. And we're not to that point yet where these congressional leaders are prepared to look him in the eye and tell him that they don't think he can win, and that in order to save democracy and beat Donald Trump, that he needs to step aside. So those are the conversations that we're going to see play out here over the next couple of days. I do think it's complicated to a certain extent.
When he was doing the interview and Stephanopoulos said, what happens if the Democratic leadership comes to you and says you should step down? And he said, that's not going to happen. And he said other things that almost sound like veiled threats. And he was saying, well, they're not saying this to my face. They're not coming and telling me they had a chance to meet with me. But I'm sure he didn't give them much, chance to talk. Like there's a way that people have of controlling a situation when they know someone's going to give them information they don't want or an opinion they don't want. I mean, you guys have experienced it as truthers, and people make it hard for you to, find a way to drop something delicate on them, right? And basically say to them, he was saying all these people told him to run, and I know they didn't do that, right? Not all of them. But he's, manipulating them, and he's bullying them, and they have no leverage. And there could be consequences, right? What if he wins or something? I mean, that's what he's thinking. And then these people had told him, tried to force him out. And so they know how vindictive his White House is. And we've seen it. We've seen it with, what they did to what I was talking about with the social media companies and all these other. I mean, he's very vindictive. He's very revengeful. Like he likes to say that about Trump. And so they really don't have any space to go and tell him. This is great, by the way, because, I guess Trump dropped something, which I'll show you in a bit, where he was mocking Joe Biden, told him keep on running, right? And, Trump is his own nightmare because he's got this agenda 25, or whatever it is. I'll talk about that in a bit. But anyways, this is a nightmare for them. And there's just no answer for them. There's no easy answer.
John Highland.
So they're playing that song, I think it's by The Clash. Should you stand by your man? Should you stand by your dementia-ridden pop president? And then Morning Joe's going to go south like they always do.
If you're president, again, just for people that are watching at home, we have a very, very intelligent audience, and I mean, I've seen the numbers. It's really humbling.
Alex, I'll take things that Trump says for 500. Alex is dead now, so I don't make that joke anymore. But anyways, that's exactly what Trump says. Oh, I got the smartest people, right? And he's and they would mock him for that, but he's saying this. Morning Joe does not have the smartest people. Like, if you're watching Morning Joe and you're not laughing at it, or you don't know it's bullshit, then you're not smart. Whatever your IQ is, whatever your level of, what people think your level of intelligence is, you're not smart if you think Morning Joe is good news.
The number of post-grad degrees and the number of people that watch that are so much smarter than me, it's a very low bar.
Stop with your false humility, right? This guy was a congressman from Pennsylvania. If you're going to run for Congress or you're going to be on TV and the news you can go out and pontificate and tell people what you think and think you have something worthy to say, you're not humble. And I'm talking about myself as well, right? You're not humble if you think that people should listen to you, right? Like, you know, and these smart people are listening to him, and he's not nearly as smart. He's just stupid. Like this goofy, you know, fake self-deprecating humor.
But there are some people that may see clips of this on the Twitter, and they don't, or the X, and it's hard for them when they're in their mother's basement eating Cheetos and typing their blogs, Danny's thoughts or whatever they are. It's hard for them to hold two sort of competing thoughts in mind. So when I say this stuff, I'm not saying about what should be. Today, we're talking about what is. And this is the reality. And Joe Biden said much of this. Joe Biden is president of the United States. Joe Biden is head of his party. Joe Biden is the nominee for the Democratic Party, or he's going to be presidential race. Joe Biden won every single Democratic primary this year.
If your audience was smart, like you say they are, you would know that he excluded RFK, the Democratic Party excluded RFK from running in the primary because he had a legitimate chance of beating Joe Biden, at least in a few states. Plus, they didn't like his radical agenda and things that he was saying. It was so contradictory to the, you know, the whole stuff that they thought about the vax and all these things, right? And so they didn't have a primary. RFK wanted to run against Joe Biden in the primary, and they blocked him, and now he's running as an independent. So don't say he won the primary because they didn't let him primary. They didn't have Joe Biden primary for the very reason he's failing now, because he would have had to debate RFK Jr. He would have had to go out there, and this stuff all would have been seen way ahead of time. And they control everything so much. So if your really smart audience was listening to you, they call bullshit on what you just said. Joe Biden didn't win any primaries because they didn't run any primaries. He ran unopposed, not by choice. RFK Jr. had at least 18% of the vote. And Joe Biden would have had to go out and campaign instead of being hidden away, and everyone would have seen his dementia, and his candidacy would have been done. Probably would have been better. They'd have a legitimate, a non-senile candidate now, probably, if Joe Biden had been exposed. So, don't talk about it like he won some, election. They rigged it for him. And don't say you're the party that's for democracy because you excluded RFK Jr. from being able to run against him. He was a legitimate opponent, right? He had, at least 20% of the vote at some period of time nationally. And there's more, too, that could have happened, too. If we saw Joe Biden fail, RFK Jr. could be your nominee right now. And they would have to run other people. It would have been a mess, right? They would have broken the party.
Joe Biden has over 90% of the delegates to the Democratic convention. Joe Biden's been doing this for 54 years. I say this not being demeaning to House members, for I was one, and I loved it. I loved serving the House and was very honored by it. But they're one of 435. What? Why is Joe Biden going to listen to a couple of House members or Mark Warner? I don't see that happening. Do you?
Well, I don't think he is going to. There's no question he's not going to listen to a couple House members. I don't even think, as I said before, I don't even think he's going to listen to the rank. Certainly he's not going to listen to background quotes, which we all have, from terrified, panicked, scared House and Senate members. I think there's.
He's got dementia, and it ain't going away. And the American people know now, at least, a good majority of them. And Trump's going to win unless you replace him. These guys are like, like they're not, they're like the guys, the flood's happening and they're still mocking Noah, right? So this is Michael Moore.
Academy Award-winning filmmaker Michael Moore is not only calling on President Biden to drop out of the race. In a July 4th essay, he writes that it is time for Biden to step down and for Vice President Kamala Harris to take the reins. He is also host of the Rumble with Michael Moore podcast and he joins me now. Michael, it's good to have you back on the show. You have some harsh words in this piece that you wrote, not as much of it directed at Biden, but at those around him. Explain why you see it that way.
Well, thanks for having me on. The first thing I want to say is I've been sitting in the green room, virtual green room here at MSNBC, and the Lord Almighty is actually back there, sitting in the room. And
look at him smile. This is a great comedic bit you're doing, Michael Moore.
He will not tell us anything about what's going on. He's only weirdly concerned with the slump that the Yankees have been in for the last month. So I like, but Lord, Biden just said last night, you're the decider. You decide if he stays or goes. And he's like, leave me out of this. Okay. Want me to walk on water? I can do that. Want me to turn a bunch of loaves of bread and fish into feeding thousands? I can do that. But don't ask me to get involved in this.
Stupid. You can bring God with you in the most mundane tasks. Cooking breakfast, you can do everything with God, with, focusing on God. And I mean, that's the ultimate state where you're focused on God and everything that you do. This thing is silly, right? But, it's a way crapping all over Biden for invoking, if the Lord tells me. Because, the Lord is telling you, bro, in every possible way, God's telling you to step aside. Like he should never run in the first place. If he was a godly person and was listening to the signs and the people around him were godly people, they wouldn't have run Joe Biden in 2020 because he was gone. He was already showing signs of dementia. It was cruel to him and it was wrong for everything else, right? I mean, in terms of if you're trying to restore confidence, and there's a little bit of he went to a church on Sunday and gave a speech. And, he talked about restoring decency to the White House. But if you're going to do that, you can't be senile. You can't have this, rigging the elections to elect a senile guy and gaming the system and censoring people on the internet and then claim to restore decency to the White House, right? You're a joke. He's a joke. And, the presidency is now a joke. Donald Trump turned the presidency into a joke by tweeting little hostile things in the middle of the night towards, little bitchy stuff that he does at 2 o'clock in the morning and all the ways that he had behaved, which I loved about his presidency. And now Joe Biden's disrespected and the Democratic Party's disrespected the presidency even more. And now the presidency is a joke. Joke around the world, joke domestically. And there's no turning that back, right?
Crazy election. Listen, I think that, yes, I need to start by saying, and of course
okay, this is where it says how great Joe Biden is.
I've been very critical of President Biden, especially since October with the war. I'm very disappointed. But this individual has been the most progressive president that we've had in my lifetime. 3.5 years, you just look at the record. I don't need to go over. I hope I don't need to go
Why do they keep on talking about his records?
Over it. For what he's done to stand up, for how he got us through COVID.
Oh my God. People know that the Democrats forced Trump, the powers that be, to close the economy. I mean, people are kind of aware of that there was an overreaction from the left and they are not loving Fauci and all these other things. And COVID is not, all the way of the mandates, all these things, right? It's now coming out, all these things that are, that were wrong and that were, where they lied to us or whatever it might be. And people know the economy is screwed over, that, the inflation is tied to closing the economy down. And they blame Biden for that more than Trump.
He got us through COVID by using science and vaccines.
Seriously?
He removed, and I said this back in the green room, he removed the devil in 2020. I mean, just go down the list. But
he did? He removed the devil?
The problem here is that I think there's a form of elder abuse going on here, where the Democratic Party and the people that are part of the apparatus pushing him to stay. And then he comes out and he says, I'm staying. And the family says,
He's not pushing him. It's elder abuse, but he's not, even if they were telling him to leave, he would ignore them.
I'm staying. And I don't know about you, Eamon, but in spite of my criticisms about Gaza with Biden, watching the debate a week ago was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It was, I just.
So sad. I was so sad. It was heartbreaking. I don't know. I was so sad. It was a great moment for me, bro. But be happy, bro. I don't know what your problem is. So Trump just can't help himself, right? Couple of things I want to show you here, because all he has to stand back and watch the Democrats implode. Like, they don't have any path forward. They need like a miracle, or they need people to willingly vote for a senile candidate, right? Or somebody that's completely unlikable. But anyways, this happened.
Well, President Joe Biden heads to Pennsylvania today for campaign events as...
It's the gumball guy. He used to count Trump's lies in gumballs. It was awesome.
In-party pressure mounts for him to drop out. The 5th House Democrat, Representative Angie Craig, asking him to end his campaign. She joins Representatives Doggett, Grijalva, Moulton, and Quigley, who are publicly calling him out.
Well, now the campaign is facing new scrutiny for how it's handling Biden's media blitz. On First of All Saturday, Philadelphia radio host Andrea Lawful Sanders told me that Biden's team sent her a list of questions to pick from before interviewing the president.
The gumball guy breaking stories.
Late last night, a source familiar with the Biden campaign told CNN that while hosts have always been free to ask any questions, they'll no longer provide any suggested questions moving forward. Despite
we will refrain from offering suggested questions. Why would you do that in the first place, right? Like, that's what you're into democracy, and that's what you did. You want, you people that interview your candidate to have questions. You want to have questions he's prepared for and questions you ask them to give him, right? And so we will refrain from offering suggestions, right? Well, that's stupid.
Want him to withdraw. Donald Trump is seizing his opportunity to taunt Biden. He's now urging him to stay in the race despite mounting criticism. CNN's Steve Contorno has the details.
Steve Contorno, is he a magician or a CNN reporter?
Trump has remained largely quiet amid the Democratic fallout over Joe Biden's debate performance. But on Saturday, he broke his silence, posting a mocking message to social media, urging Joe Biden to stay.
Crooked Joe Biden should ignore his many critics and move forward with alacrity and strength with his powerful and far-reaching campaign. He should be sharp, precise, and energetic, just like he was in the debate, in selling the policies of open borders where millions of people, including record numbers of terrorists, are allowed to enter our country, from prisons and mental institutions totally unchecked and unvetted, to ending Social Security, man-playing in women's sports, high taxes, high interest rates, encouraging a woke military, uncontrollable inflation, record-setting crime, electric vehicles, subservience to China and other countries, endless wars, putting America last, losing our dollar-based standard, and so much more. Yes, Sleepy Joe should continue his campaign of American destruction and make China great again. Typical Trump. Funny, but like, dude, you just sit back. Like, just don't. He can't not be the center of attention, right?
Stay in the race. On Truth Social, he wrote, quote, Joe Biden
No, why did you leave out crooked?
should ignore his many critics.
You left out crooked, so this is CNN. The other thing is the Biden administration and the mainstream media want to change the subject and talk about Trump again, right? They want to move on from this Jojo Magoo thing and talk about Trump because that's their main, that's their signature move. But then there's this 2025 project.
Trump is officially trying to distance himself from Project 2025, the Heritage Foundation's far-right blueprint for a possible second Trump term. Trump claimed to know nothing about the group's plan and criticized that plan, he knows nothing about. This sudden distancing comes just days after the...
I know nothing about Project 2025. I have no idea who's behind it. I disagree with some of the things they're saying, and some of the things they're saying are absolutely ridiculous and abysmal. Anything they do, I wish them luck, but I have nothing to do with them. Why would you wish them luck? Now, this could be some intelligence community, BS thing that's being put out there to undermine the right wing or just cause division. But it's a stupid thing to do, right? Because, well, let me show you the rest of it here.
The president of the Heritage Foundation said this in the wake of the Supreme Court's immunity ruling.
The left has taken over our institutions. The reason that they are apoplectic right now, the reason that so many anchors on MSNBC, for example, are losing their minds daily is because our side is winning. And so I come full circle in this response and just want to encourage you with some substance that we are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be.
Just a moronic thing to say. Just like really stupid. The R word comes to mind, right?
Frank Puglisi and Jill Wine-Banks are back with us. Simone, Mariah carried them, right? I don't know her.
I don't know her. It's like, who is she? What? I've never met her before.
Okay, so this gives them an opportunity. This goes on for another 10 minutes. They're going to talk about all the crap that's in this thing. It's so bad that Trump had to deny it, right? Okay, so they brung up all these extremist groups that were linked to Trump. Of course, he denied the Cubies and then embraced their language, all those moronic Cubies that were a disaster for the truth community and everybody else. It hurt us in terms of censorship. And, whatever the official story is, it kind of cost Trump the election because they use this. This is how they used it last time. A lot of people who just don't care about politics, who really didn't like Joe Biden, heard that Trump was a evil racist and was involved in like hate speech and possible hate crimes and things like this, right? And when they heard all these things, it motivated them to go out and vote. And, even with the disparity in the popular vote, the swing states were won by a couple thousand votes, right? And so, again, I'm just going with the official story. And let's say Trump isn't an actor and he's actually trying to win. And, all the people who are Trumpers are trying to get Trump elected. Like let's say these Heritage Foundation people are legit and they're not shills for the FBI or these other organizations. There's a guy here I'm not going to show you the rest of the clip, but one of the guys is a former FBI agent and he talks about all these, it's just, well, let me just play a little bit more of it here.
Revolution, which will remain bloodless.
Carried them, right? I don't know her.
I don't know her. It's like, who is she? What? I've never met her before. Also, was Kevin Roberts talking about us when he said
Maybe.
The MSNBC anchors? Was he talking about us? I don't know. He's welcome back anytime to explain this debacle. I want to play for you all Taraji P. Henson at the BET Awards. And after I play her, you're going to understand why.
Time for us to play chess, not checkers.
Play chess and not checkers. She's going to lay down some serious intellectual stuff here.
It's about making decisions that will affect us as human beings. Look it up.
You mad, bro?
They are attacking our most vulnerable citizens. The Project 2025 plan is not a game. Look it up.
So when you're saying, so your idea of playing chess and not checkers is to vote for Joe Biden, right? That's playing chess? You're voting for a senile guy, and you're saying you're playing chess?
Taraji P. Henson hosted the BET Awards this year, and Frank, I was struck by this moment because I don't believe it was scripted in there.
You don't believe it was scripted? You think she just went off the script? You don't believe it was scripted?
But Project 2025 is going beyond the political group chats, if you will. So much so that Donald Trump has moved to disavow it, even though Kevin Roberts of the Heritage Foundation says he regularly speaks with Donald Trump about it, and it is all about infusing Trumpism. Talk just about well, first of all, I think Donald Trump is lying. We don't know for sure, but he has been prone to not tell the truth about conversations he has had and what he does and doesn't know. But this plan, it is not hyperbole, right? People should take it seriously.
Got to take Project 2025 seriously.
Because it can be implemented. There's all this talk that, oh, people are being hysterical, but this plan could potentially be implemented if an administration wanted to do so.
I'm so glad Project 2025 is getting more popular.
Exactly. We need to know about it. It's so important. It's so real.
Because it needs to. It is essentially a plan against America. And
oh, my God. It's really, I didn't know it was that bad.
We know about the checks and balances in our government. You know, I think Trump's...
It's stupid QB crap, right? It's the same stupid, moronic QB crap.
Taking a page here with Project 2025 from Putin's playbook, which is...
Frank Figliuzzi.
You know, Putin attacked R and tried to interfere with R.
Trump's being like Putin. He's becoming a dictator.
2016 presidential election. And when the special counsel inquiry caught him red-handed, hey, these are your guys with this social media propaganda. We've caught them. We've indicted them. You know, the use of private citizens and oligarchs to do the propaganda within our social media allowed Putin that arm's length distance to say,
Putin.
I don't know. They're private citizens. So here we go again. We have the Heritage Foundation saying, you know, with Trump saying, I don't know anything about this, but you know, just like I don't know who the Proud Boys are. Who are they? What do you want me to say about the Proud Boys? It's the same thing. So essentially, it's going to dismantle the checks and balances. What would that look like within, for example, my old agency, the FBI?
Boom. He's an FBI agent talking about what seems like some BS psychological operation, QB style. So let's just assume this is real. Let's just pretend this is all real. These are real people. The Heritage Foundation are real Trump supporters. Trump is really running for president, and this is a real thing. It's like epically stupid. Because when you're going to suggest something radical that's going to provoke people to vote. Now, all the people who would read this 2025 thing are already voting for Trump. I mean, anybody who's into the 2025 thing already wants Trump. They're already, on board. These are the hardcore QB truther, right-wing fake truther, pseudo-truther people who want this radical change. And, it's the QB, it's like an extension of the QB movement. Really stupid. And, these people are already donating money to Trump and activated as a group. Like, they're totally into Trump. So it's not going to help him. But what it's going to do is provoke the left and maybe help them turn out some votes. You've heard the left talk about it over and over again. You don't see like Fox News and right-wing people talking about this. Not that I, get a chance to watch it, but I know they're not, right? This is something that the left is talking about, media and celebrities and these other people, because they want to provoke their base to vote, right? They want, even if they're, Joe Biden senile, right? And the other things is they're using it right now to try to change the subject. Every focus is on Joe Biden being senile with dementia, and this MSNBC piece here is trying to get the focus on 2025. And so right now, Trump is looking great. And everybody knows if you're going to suggest something radical, you don't do it till after the election, right? You don't tell people what you're going to do. Gangsters move in silence, right? Like, it's just stupid to do that, right? You don't, say, oh, this is what we're going to do before you do it. In fact, Trump, when he said he was going to get rid of ISIS, which, he basically did by not ordering them because they were an intelligence community asset, but he got rid of them. And they said, how are you going to get rid of them? He said, why should I tell you? Then they'll know, right? Why should I give away my plan, right? The football coach doesn't give away their plan before the game, their game plan. And so why would they push this 2025 thing ahead of time so the left can prepare for it and stop it from happening? And so it's really either stupid, epically stupid, or it's like some kind of sabotage that's going on. But the level of incompetence here, you just let the Democrats implode. Like, that's all you have to do. And not that I want Trump or I care or I don't know who's going to be better. And I mean, they both are going to be bad. It's just different ways of being bad. And we'll see how it all plays out, right? But when something like this is, it's just completely a loss, the 2025 thing. It's a complete loss, and there's nothing to be gained. You're not going to bring in any more votes, but you're going to provoke votes against you. and you're going to freak out everyone out on the left, and they're going to have some talking point now, and they're going to, no matter what Trump says, they're going to say, well, he's just, denying this thing that he's actually a part of, because this stuff happened before, and it didn't play well for. This is a thing that's not going to play well for Trump, right? It's something that's, they're salivating over this thing, but when your enemy is destroying themselves, you just sit back, you don't gloat, you don't do anything to make people feel sorry for them. You don't do anything. You just sit back and watch it happen. Like, you don't celebrate, don't do a victory dance, don't do anything that'll turn the tide. And Trump can't help himself, and neither can his dopey followers. And, whatever this is going on, whether it's a psychological operation from the intelligence community, the Trumpers and the people that are, show up here and comment, and the QBs and all these people are always doing stupid shit, right? Like, Trump isn't going to solve anything. He's not the hero you think he is. But, you're not helping him by doing stupid stuff and posting stupid stuff on the internet. Like right now, you just let the left destroy itself. You sit in silence and, you win the game without having to do anything. But once you insert yourself into it, then you run the risk of turning the tides, right? It's just stupid, But anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely pointing for the apocalypse and the ascension. And have a blessed day and be grateful.